accept the loss, I'm hard-headed. There's a little bit of madness to my method. Many falling off that fine line that I'm treading. I risk anything to be great, and I'm not letting nobody rob me of my victory. Number one, that's what I'm meant to be. When by any means, only thing that makes sense to...
Here we go. It is episode 17 of the Red, White, and Crew podcast. Thank you for joining us. This one will be a little different. This will be, as I wanted to call it, I was telling the boys on the crew, I wanted to call this the post-mortem autopsy edition, right? Because there's a lot to talk about, a lot that will be spoken to from the heart based on facts, but it wasn't pretty. But before we dive into all of that, I guess let me segue really quick to tell you about our proud partners. Our proud partners are title sponsor partner at GoalGetter. So GoalGetter is a recruiting education platform built to help female soccer student athletes and their families navigate the path to college soccer. The process can feel overwhelming, especially when families don't fully understand the recruiting landscape. GoalGetter provides the education, tools, and guidance families need to navigate the recruiting landscape and make informed decisions. To get more information on GoalGetter, you can visit them on their website at goalgetter.com. That's GOLGETR.com, as well as on socials, on Instagram and X at GoalGetter. That's GOLGETR Soccer, at GoalGetter Soccer, or again at their website at goalgetter.com. Gents, how are we? We're like, I don't know, maybe 30-ish hours post debacle. Right, between U.S. men's national team performance versus Belgium in the round of 16, in which they lost 4-1, not 3-1. But how we doing, man?
What stage of grief are you all in? I don't know if I'm in acceptance yet. We're still getting there.
2027 is when acceptance is.
Ah, good. Yeah. Nah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great at all. I mean, obviously the result, but I think I always tell my teams, like, I can handle losing a game. I cannot handle losing when you go out and don't perform at your best ability. And I thought out of everything we saw out of them this entire tournament, we took about 7 or 8 steps backwards in that game, as opposed to where we could have kept playing at the same level that we've been playing at. We just looked scared. We looked intimidated at the moment. Not going towards the ball, not attacking the ball in your own box, kind of looking around for someone else to kind of be the guy to go clear it. You know, that first goal especially was, I think we had West and Dest, and I think there was one more, maybe Freeman was right there, and all of them just kind of stood still. Yeah. So wasn't good all the way around, and I think it just leaves everyone with a bad taste in their mouth.
Well, massive one. Yeah. So. Elias?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it. It's like, I think going into the tournament, if you said we'd make the round of 16, I think people would say, okay, that's solid, right? Like we wanted, I think quarterfinals was everyone's goal. Semifinal, final is kind of a dream, but it's like, but then once you get there and the way that you got there, I made a golf analogy, or saw somebody make a golf analogy. It's like you freaking smoke your drive, you get up on the green, and then you 3-putt for par. Like, yeah, you got a par. You probably did what you expected, but the way that you did it, it just leaves you sick. I mean, it was a wasted opportunity. You had everything going for you. You had the home crowd. You've been playing good soccer. You got a gift from FIFA getting your best player, one of your best players back. And they just looked disjointed. I mean, we couldn't keep the ball, which was, I think, the most disappointing piece. Is it did seem like the pressure was just way too much for them. They just seemed overwhelmed mentally, because those were mistakes and that we hadn't seen them, do all World Cup. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think I try to separate it from the stand. Well, I guess the more I have a chance to think about it, I look at the fact it just kind of seemed like a perfect storm of, they clearly weren't locked in. They clearly weren't just ready. And was it a combination of the stage was too big? Because up to that point, they hadn't shown that, right? They were kind of, looked like they were calm. They were trying to keep things loose. I mean, Pochettino's out there throwing pitches out at a Seattle Mariners game, all this stuff. And then, were they being maybe overly paraded to think that they had already won, like the job was done, so to speak. And then they just thought, hey, on this day, we're going to have the entire stadium is going to be in our favor here at Soccer City, USA in Seattle. And we just have to show up, right? We just have to show up. But I don't know if it was a combination of that, if it was a combination of us playing the toughest opponent that we had played up to this point, a top 10. Yes, it was a Belgium that had not looked good whatsoever. We know that. We knew that going in. But it was also a Belgium that all of a sudden found itself getting a nice, good shot in the arm of motivation, right, with the whole Balogun saga, right? You can't. They even acknowledged that. They even admitted that. And then I also felt that, to his credit, as coaches on here, to his credit, I thought Rudy Garcia got his game plan, his lineup, who he played. You could clearly tell that who he started was not who Pochettino was expecting, right? Who the boys were expecting, and how he decided to basically say, "Hey, you're gonna have to win it through the center of the field because we're gonna lock you down on the outside," right? And then that led to a lot of confusion, and I think which kind of perpetuated the whole "we can't keep the ball, we can't go forward like we wanted to." And then on top of that, there was some good. Like he played, that was I think the youngest roster he's played up to this point in all matches, and they looked hungrier, man. They looked hungrier, and for me, in the end, that was the hard part, right? I guess we can dive into this now. We'll transition into the ugly, right? The ugly in terms of that match, because there's ugly all over it, right? It was just a flat out embarrassment, is what we can call it. I think it's safe to call it that. And as you mentioned, Elias, we definitely kind of lost. There was a great opportunity squandered on home soil, right? And I think the hardest thing for me as that match was unfolding. So 2-1, anything can still happen, right? 2-1, anything can still happen. Almost got a header off of a corner right before halftime. Could have gone in. It could have been 2-2. But then, I mean, the third goal leading up to, it is what it is. The situation that unfolded with Matt Freese, and then Tim Ream unable to stop the ball. That goal was just, I mean, you could have just entered the Benny Hill music, or it was like this. It was like I told you guys, this is like Sunday. This is like, well, Ramos, you would know this, Elias. This is like Sunday beer league kind of goal stuff that you see, men's league, right? And I saw that, I was like, I can't believe this is our national team. This is how we're going to give up a third goal. And sure enough. And then from there, it goes to 3-1. And all of a sudden, I didn't see fight, I didn't see fight. I saw confusion. Most of all, I saw a team that just had lost. I don't know if they ever really showed up with any heart, with any desire in that match, but there was none. We mentioned, I know Wes and I mentioned Berhalter of all people, who kind of subbed in. He looked like he wanted to fight. 78 minutes in, still trying to take a shot when it was 3-1, but there was no fight. There was no desire, and this in the end came down to mentality, right? And Belgium wanted it more. We thought we just had to show up. We thought we thought we were the reigning champions and just showed up, and that was it, because it was our God-given right, because it's on home soil. And no, Belgium just came and just took it, bullied us, and it looked like a U18 team versus a grown ass men's team is what that looked like. So, thoughts on the ugly, guys?
Yeah, I think they came in and in these knockout games, I think the experience or inexperience for the U.S. really showed up big time. In a knockout game that the teams are going to have their spells where they're better. We've seen it in all of these knockout games. I mean, but you have to be able to ride that out and not give up one or two goals in a 15-minute period where they come out. All the U.S. really had to do was survive that first 15 minutes. I mean, if they come out and even if Belgium was amped up, they felt they felt like they had been, hosed by FIFA, so they were ready to go. You have to survive that 15 minutes and play your way into the game. And instead, it just felt like one mistake led to another and led to another and led to another and led to another.
Did you think that was did you feel like that was even, do you think that's well, I don't know, obviously how they played, it wasn't carried out, but do you think that was a message even conveyed in the locker room? Do you think?
Like, about like, hey, we're gonna have to
Survive
survive
what, like
it.
first 10, 15 minutes, we're going to see a pissed off
I
Belgium.
don't know. I mean, I don't know. Surely you would. I mean, I tell that to my teams in any big game we play. I'm like, guys, this is not going to be easy. You're going to have moments where you're going to be pinned back, and that's okay, but you have to survive those moments. And then when you're the better team for, the 15-minute spell or 10-minute spell, that's when you go capitalize. And that's how these knockout games are won or lost, is who can take advantage of the momentum and who lets the wheels fall off. And the U.S. just let the wheels fall off completely. And then, we were talking about, and I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about Christian Pulisic, but he's got to be the guy. And I'm not saying he has to go be Messi and he needs to go dribble the entire team and create, 3 goals or 2 goals or whatever. But he has to be, if out of anybody on that team, you have to be able to say, when we are getting pinned back, I'm going to hit the ball to that guy and he's going to get us out, at least out of pressure, and get us a chance to breathe and be able to bring other people into the game. And instead, he lost the ball 11 times in the first half. I mean, that is unacceptable from your go-to player. You have to have an outlet. He had to be your outlet, and he wasn't. And then and if you can't give the ball to Christian in that moment, who can you give the ball to? And then that's what, then it starts feeding off, and the team starts to feel that. Well, crap, our best player can't hold on to the ball. How am I supposed to hold on to the ball? So it was awful. It was
13
abysmal.
times lost possession, a total of 13 times in that match, 11 in the first half, as you mentioned, the most of any single player in the knockout rounds. Like, yeah. So, Wes,
Yeah, I would. I mean, since we started talking about Christian Pulisic, let's just go ahead and
okay.
dive into him. I
Yeah.
do think I will start by saying this. I think it's unfair to blame any one single person on this team because and I'm not saying you guys have, but I've reading in the media, reading people's comments, a lot of people upset with Tim Ream. Listen, we know what Tim Ream, who he is, who he was going to be as a player. There's not much he can do when we put him in bad situations. We knew that we had to make sure that we had coverage for him, and if he ever got 1v1, that was where it was going to be an issue. But the goals that we gave up, especially the first two, you can't get mad at him for being out jumped. The ball should have never been in that spot in the first place. Let's not let the ball get to the end line. Why are we giving a guy the end line to go attack, to get across
Let's
in?
not let the ball bounce in the box. Yeah.
Don't let the ball bounce in a box in those situations. So, I want to preface what I'm going to say here with Pulisic as we're not blaming one person. It is very bad, like you said. He lost the ball 13 times. All the things that we talked negatively about Weah in the Turkey game, that's exactly what Pulisic looked like against Belgium. Not wanting to take people on, looking to go backwards every chance he got. I don't think there was a time where he went positive or went forward with a dribble. Definitely wasn't a time that he kept it if he tried. So those things kind of hurt. And then all the comments afterwards. I'm not upset with the fact that he said, I'm tired, or not even I'm tired. I'm going to I'll have some time to rest now because of this injury. I saw that article. Somebody was, saying some things. I'm not necessarily upset with that. Here's what I'm upset about. You took a whole summer off when we could have gained momentum and we could have won a trophy on home soil the year before the World Cup comes. You took that time off so that you could be at your best when it got to this time. What was that all for then? Because you definitely didn't look your best. I mean, you could argue, yeah, in the Paraguay game, he looked great, but they're talking about he came in with that knock to his calf. So the hard part for me is if you're going to take all that time off, you're going to prepare yourself mentally and physically to be ready to go and be the guy on home soil. Where is the guy? And you know what? That's fine if it's not you. That's fine if you're not the go-to player that we thought you were. And I think we read that article where it was talking about this is who he is in his career.
Mhm.
He's always been injury prone. He's been inconsistent with the way he plays. I think for me, we've got to take that label of Captain America off of him and stop putting that title on him, because until he proves that he really deserves it, what have you done so far? You scored a PK in a Nations League game. You scored a goal and we beat Mexico in CONCACAF Nations League and took off your shirt that said "Man in the Mirror," and yeah, I got everybody talking. There was hyping points, but the inconsistency in his play was very, very frustrating. And then the fact, listen, I know you can't. We all don't know the injury that of getting kicking someone's back foot, what it does to everybody. I've done it myself. I've kicked the ground and it hurts. I've kicked into somebody's ankle and it hurts. But I think you would have had to. My leg would have had to been falling off my body for you to pull me out of that game.
Yeah, I think in the end, right, it's 45. When we look over the course of 5 matches, we got in terms of potential, right? Potential prime Pulisic, we got 45 minutes, man.
Yeah, that was
We
it.
got 45 minutes. We got 45 minutes in that first match against Paraguay. That's because he wasn't really a major factor in the round of 32 match versus Bosnia and Herzegovina. Got about 30 minutes, I think, in the Turkey A match.
Yeah.
And just it was about getting him some minutes, and if anything, the real contribution he had in that one, I get it, it was kind of a throwaway match at that point, but the only real contribution, the significant contribution where his name really came up in that one was getting magged by Arda Güler that led to that game-winning goal for Turkey, right? In the corner, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
I think, also, like, I mean, yeah, we could talk probably for an hour about Christian, but
right.
where was Tyler Adams? Where was McKinney? Where was, Tillman? You have to have a technician in the midfield in these kind of games that can get a hold of the ball and get the game to be played at the tempo you want. If you look at all the great teams right now, the teams that are still in it, they have one guy, and it's not necessarily their superstar, right? Like you look at Argentina, it's Alexis McAllister. Everyone talks about Messi, everyone talks about everything, but they can find him in those pockets, and he's so press resistant. Spain has Pedri. Switzerland has Xhaka. Like all these teams have a player in their midfield that you can give the ball to, and they're not going to lose it. And for as athletic, and we talked about how athletic and direct this team is. But there was once that didn't work, when Belgium matched us, we talked about how he went to his youngest lineup that he's played. When they matched us athletically and those spaces weren't appearing, we were not able to adapt our game. And that is a step that, the really good teams are able to do. They're able to play in multiple game states, right? Every great team obviously has the game that they want to play, but you have to be able to survive different game states. And we were not able to survive a game where we were matched athletically because we didn't have the technical ability to go and get a hold of the ball. And then it just became wave after wave after wave after wave of attack. And eventually you're going to get one in, and then individual errors, start to compound really quickly.
so and that brings us to Pochettino, right? So was there really no plan B, no adjustment in place to be made as early as the water break, let alone halftime, right? And or was there because there didn't seem to be one implemented, right? Closest thing we saw was maybe it's 2-1. We come out second half, and there was about the first 8 to 10 minutes. We're finally kind of going forward, right? And then again, so 59-minute mark, the dagger, the nail in the coffin. Insert whatever cliche you want, but the third goal essentially did us in, and the problem was that's where I've really not recognized this program, honestly, if we want to go back to over the course of the last 4 years. Basically, in terms of when things don't go our way, or when we're matched, or when we're playing a higher level team, all right, the staples of the U.S. men's national team has always been what? Grit, fight, heart, more than anything, right? Not going to make it easy, right? That has been clearly established going back to 1994, 1990, really. But you look at, this in 2014, right? Going back 12 years ago when we were eliminated by Belgium, right? This roster has, in 2026, where the U.S. men's national team has collectively more depth and more talent that plays at much higher levels in higher leagues across the world compared to that 2014 roster. And yet that 2014 roster against Belgium's true golden generation, right, took them, took them to the limit, 2-1. It took a historic performance, right? Historic performance by Tim Howard, as we know. And but again, how many times have we mentioned Wando now, Aaron? Could have won it, right? Could
Yeah,
have
you
won it.
want it.
Could have
Well,
won
that's
it.
what we're talking about too. Look at that roster. You have a guy like Wondolowski that we're counting on at the end of the game to go get us a goal.
Right.
Like, look at the difference in who we have on the bench and who's there now for us. I don't know. I think you can
But
talk
the
about
mentality, the
Pochettino.
spirit, the fight, the
Yeah,
mentality.
you can
It's
talk about
nothing
Pochettino
else.
and tactics, but when you don't have that fight, when you don't have that sense of urgency, the tempo, when it's all gone, there's not much that tactics are going to be able to do, in my opinion. I think you have to have a team that's going to be willing to fight. And for whatever reason, we weren't that team on this night. There were a few people. We talked about Berhalter. I thought he was fantastic when he came in, and I hope he gets a big move overseas because I think he needs to be able to grow, and I think he can be a player for us in the future. But man, I think that's the hardest part. Coming out of 2018, it was when we didn't make the World Cup. Remember after that Trinidad and Tobago game, there were a lot of supporters that were like, I never want to see a lot of some of these people in a U.S.
Right.
men's national team shirt again because of the way we handled ourselves on the field that night. Christian Pulisic was on that field. He was one of the only ones that was crying at the end of that game and was so distraught on what happened. Where's that Christian Pulisic? Where are those kind of players that are like, this means a whole lot? And I think we talked about it too in our group text. Balagoon was the only one that I've seen tweeted something out or put out a message talking about, I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry for our performance. That's not who we want. He talked about I waited 4 years to play at this level, and to go out like that is hard to swallow.
Yeah. I saw something. Serginho Dest put something out. I think
Yeah.
I don't know if it was late last night or early this morning, also, but little kind of somewhat similar to Belligan, but not. I think a little more vanilla, I guess. Didn't seem as I guess direct and heartfelt, I guess, as Belligan's. But yeah, I just you mentioned the 2018 failure. And what happened there in 2017 in Trinidad and Tobago, I think a lot of that was the lesson learned there was so many of our guys had just aged out long in the tooth, right? But then there was no real overlap in terms of this generation now that is playing now. What are all those same guys saying, right? The likes of Landon Donovan, Dempsey, just to name a few, and even some of the older guys, right? The previous generation before that, they're feeling that this group of guys were largely handed the baton, right? Didn't necessarily fight for it, didn't necessarily take it from, and there wasn't much overlap there either. So, and again, that starts spiraling us into the development piece, which, I mean, Elias and I were already talking about it for like 10 minutes before we went live, talking about youth soccer, youth soccer development, right? And we see this every 4 years when the U.S. men's national team crashes out. Pay to play, pay to play, pay to play. Everybody focuses on that. But the reality of it is it's our closed system, right? Not until we have an open system, right, will everything else, it's the ripple effect of that. But we're not saying that pay to play isn't right. Yeah, obviously it's a massive factor. But in all these other countries, someone still pays. It's just the difference is in this country, they've passed the buck on to the bill to the parent, Why? Because of the closed system. But until parents, and we see it, right? Every so often, right? We got parents coming through the cycle with one kid, with a second kid. If they have 2, 3 kids that have gone through the club system over the course of, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 years, by the time they get to that second or third kid, it's like they all have a story about how much they've paid, about how much the excess and the travel, and is this necessary, and how should we be doing things, right? So yeah, I mean, that'll spiral us into a whole other conversation, obviously. But I don't know, thoughts on, but I guess my take back to Poch, I guess this is for you, Elias. Was there really a plan B, or hey, this is it? This was our version of All Out, and they punched us in the mouth early, and we just really truly had no plan B.
I think Plan B goes back to, I think their Plan B would have maybe been the style of old, where we're going to play, 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, keep it tight, try to play on the counter. I don't know that if you look at that bench there, I mean, there is not a single player on our bench that maybe even comes off the bench for Belgium, if we're being honest. And, we talked about, and there's no real competition for some of those starting spots. Tim Ream did an amazing job for his, I thought he played to the best of his ability, but he is limited. You have a 38-year-old center back starting, and that goes to show you that you really don't have any other options in the pool. So, yes, I think the top end of our pool is better, but there was nothing to come in and change the game. And if I'm Poach sitting there, I mean, I don't know that any change he makes really changes that game a whole lot. Berhalter comes in, has a great shot, works hard. But if you brought on 10 Berhalters, is that game is probably 2-1, probably still in favor of Belgium. They keep it close, they fight, but you still probably come up on the wrong end. So, I don't know. I think that the key is to build on what, and everyone's pissed off, but there are some building blocks there. You have players like Tillman, you have players like Freeman, you have players like Balogun, right? Pulisic can still be a really good piece for us if you get another creator type to take some pressure off of him. I don't think he's the main man. I think that Wes was right. Stop calling him Captain America. But he can be, if he's your second best player, you're in a really, really good spot, I think. So it's just, I don't know. I don't know that, I think Poach had another idea, maybe, Pepe, but it just seemed like they were just overrun, and Belgium just, you would have had to change the whole team out, I think, really, to really get a difference, because I think those players mentally, and we know that pressure does crazy things to players. I think that the pressure of going down 2-0, they fought back, they went down 1-0, you get the goal, you get hit in the mouth again. For me, that was the dagger. Like, for me, that's when I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. Because you go up you go 1-1, and then they're still showing the replays of the goals and the balls in the net, And so it's, you have to be able to survive that. And that goes back to, this has to be a legitimate learning experience for these players.
Yeah.
The next time they come out and the next time they get punched in the mouth, because we've seen all these teams, they get punched in the mouth, but they find a way. I mean, look at Argentina. Look at Belgium against Senegal. They're down 2-0 late in the game. They could have easily let Senegal get a third, but they kept it tight, found a way back in. And that's where international football, I think, is won and lost, is in those types of moments. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we really fell short. More so than we don't have the players or we didn't have the right system. It's managing those moments of, they are all over us. We can't let this game get away from us. We've got to keep it within reach, and we were not able to keep it within reach.
Yeah, and I've seen this. I forgot where the stat was. There's already been more goals, final goals, and game winners after the 80th minute in this World Cup than any other in history, right? So yeah, that just goes to your point. But I guess for me, right, when I started looking at it as a whole, I started trying to kind of dissect it a little bit. We talk about, the visual of the proverbial coffin, right? We talked about a dagger, so I'll just say a coffin, right? So I think the first nail in the coffin was probably, and why I mentioned the plan B from Pochettino, was the lineup, right? You see the lineup, and as a coaching staff, you kind of already have an idea, caught you by surprise. Your focus is your team, inevitably, but now you kind of have an idea of how they're going to try to play you, right? So I guess that was the first nail. Second nail, all of a sudden, the first goal we give up, in every single game, we had gone up early, or relatively early, especially in the first three, scored in the first, no later than the first 11 minutes. Now, for the first time against, in the most important match we've ever played on home soil against a traditionally very talented team, we're down a goal, right? And a goal that we could have prevented, right? That we'll get back to that later. Then we answer back. Malik Tillman's get a great deflection off his free kick, 1-1. And as you said, I mean, I literally it's about 10 steps from where I'm sitting in my living room watching the game. I get up. Malik Tillman scores. Right, they're getting ready to bring the ball back to midfield. I get up to go to the fridge. All right, 10 steps. Get the fridge. I'm getting another drink. On my way back, Belgium's already scored. You know, I was like, so that's right. The third nail in the coffin, and then the final nail really, it just based upon their body language for sure. Because for me, in the end, I think that's what did it for me was just body language as a whole, flat, right, lack of energy. But the third goal is obviously the final nail in the coffin, I think, and you could just see it, right? It just you got and then Pulisic, who we were just talking about earlier, is asking to be subbed out, right?
Yeah.
I just so when we get back to mentality, so until the talent level, obviously we got a lot of depth issues that we still got to work on, but until the talent level of this generation and what we have coming up through the pipeline matches the old school mentality, the fight, and what we're known for. And I guess I don't know from my perspective, until those two I think can merge somehow, and I felt like Pochettino was on the right track about that with culture, right? Which I felt like that was the most disappointing part of this loss was mentality, fight. And yeah, you can make the argument that yeah, there was some bad juju floating in the air with the soccer gods and the karma because of the previous 36 hours and the shenanigans of the red card and the Balogun saga. I get all that, but still, I mean, we can't apologize for them as players. They can't apologize for that and somehow get in their own heads and feel sorry for anybody about that. They got to play, right? They got to play. And with the biggest, largest audience, right, in American, viewership history, they never came out of the locker room.
I think too, like you have to look at it's not just the like a lot of people talk about with Belgium, they were fired up to play because of the whole Balogun issue. I don't think it was necessarily the Balogun issue. Yes, did they took issue with the fact that he was allowed to play because everyone did. Everyone that watches soccer and follows it knows that that wasn't something that commonly happens. I mean, rarely ever. So it was shocking to that. I think more of it was the response from the media and all the pundits talking of, oh, well, now that Balogun's back, this is a cakewalk for the U.S. And I think that right there is what pissed off the Belgium team. And you see it with the gesturing after Lukaku's goal at the end and just the way they handle it. I think it was Courtois who said it. He goes, we just felt disrespected, that we were going to be a walk in the park. And so we got a pissed off, energized Belgium team almost like they woke up a sleeping giant because this was not the same Belgium team that we have seen over the course of this tournament. And I think why a lot of people felt the way they felt was because of that. They looked old, they looked slow, they looked like they weren't up for the challenge of this. And now, who knows, going into a game against Spain, who's, obviously they haven't given up any goals and Spain looks the favorite, but you still got a lot of talent that's out there on that team. And I think my biggest concern was after watching the Senegal game was who does Rudy Garcia start? I said it to a couple, I don't know if we talked about it, but I was talking about it with some people here that we were watching the game. I was like, I am more concerned that if he starts the same people that he brought in to take over for Doku and to take over for KDB,
Yeah.
that's more of the issue. And that's what happened. I mean, they brought those guys in, they energized them, they all were ready to play. And I think that's what you see where they gave up the goal. Their mentality was, oh, no, we're not going to give this away. We're going right back at it. And they held us down all night long. And like we've talked about before, couldn't get out of pressure, couldn't get on the ball, and just really felt Courtois said it. He goes, I don't know if it was the fact that we beat them 5-2 last time, but they felt like they knew they couldn't win. And we felt that as a team.
Yeah. I mean, was it really? We thought, yeah, it's a great point, right? We thought about the game in March, right? The friendly in March. We thought that, hey, two different teams, two different situations. They're playing totally different. And yet, in the end, we lose to them by a combined score of 9-3, right? That's they. Not only were they just better on that day, but do I think they're just 4 goals better than us? No,
No.
I don't. But because you look back, we dissect each goal. the three of the four. I mean, and of course, Lukaku's was in junk time at that point, so they're just looking to make another one just to add it on. But the three easily preventable, right? Easily preventable, right? We won't. I mean, and Freese's the third one. I mean, I just like I said, I thought I was watching Sunday Men's League. You know, I really did. So I don't know how you defend that. I really don't know. Like literally and figuratively, I don't know how you defend that. You know. So
Yeah, I mean, you're done. You've slowed the game back down, right? Because I mean, I think it was 2-1, maybe 20 minutes. Was that before the water break? By the time it was 2-1, um, but and then you've kind of settled the game back down, right? You're still down by one. We talked about how we had the chance on the corner right before half, but the game is kind of settling down, and you kind of feel like, okay, even though we're not really getting anything going, Belgium doesn't look like they're going to score every time they get the ball like they did that first 10 minutes. So, and then to give up that goal is just inexcusable from Matt Freese. I mean, that because if that's 2-1, going in and I've heard people, they're like, it was so cool, even though we're losing 4-1, the fans are still chanting USA in the stadium. If it's 2-1 and in the last 10 minutes, you don't think that Belgium's going to set up, shop in their own box and that we're not going to get some chances out of that? I mean, and then what happens after that? So again, it's managing the moments. We were not able to manage the moments. Is Belgium 3 goals better than us? Absolutely not. I don't think so. But they showed world class type composure where we had Sunday League composure.
yeah,
And that's what I think ultimately, more so than mentality, because I think back to the Bosnia and Herzegovina game when you're down to 10 men, you really don't really even give them a chance to get back into the game. You get a second goal down a player. To me that showed a team that has the right mentality. But it's the composure, and I think that that's where a little bit of the discourse is kind of going wrong here, just in general with the media of these guys don't care, they're soft. We don't have the guys that have been in those moments before. Belgium had guys that are playing in Champions League ties consistently, right? I mean, Thibaut Courtois is never going to make the mistake Matt Freese did because he's been in that situation with Real Madrid. How many times has Thibaut Courtois been in a situation with Madrid where they're down 2-0, they're getting outplayed, but they find a way to keep the game close to get back in it right at the end?
he's
That's
been there
the
so long. He's been there so long. He was the one in goal in 2014 that froze Wondolowski on that chance to hit that game winner. He's gonna.
so like to me that's the difference.
Well, it's
That
punishing
right.
mistakes, right? We talk about that as a team. Like, can you punish the mistakes when the other teams make them? And we've never been that team that has done that.
Yeah.
Even playing against the teams that we're supposed to play, beat. We're out there on the front foot. It's not like we're creating good chances, but when you get gifted the ball in the box, what are you doing with it? And we have not been a team that's been able to capitalize on those mistakes of other things. And you saw a high quality team that did every single time. Because I really do think all three of those goals came off of a mistake that we made in our defensive third.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and it didn't help. Wes, you mentioned a little bit of it. It didn't help that I don't know what to call it. Unrealistic, myopic, or is it just the hey, because we normally don't cover this sport to begin with, the
Yeah.
traditional media kind of coming in. It's like, hey, constantly asking, can they win it all? Can they win it all?
Yeah.
You know,
It's an
just
entitlement.
straight bypassing Belgium, right? Straight bypass it. And I was like, guys, let's focus on the. Yeah, I get it. When we do a bracket, it's one thing, and we can hash it out and talk about it and all that. But you got to focus on, and I don't think the media being in this, because Belgium was hearing it all, right? Being here, since it's here on home soil,
Yep.
Belgium you heard it all. And I think in the end, you're
We
right.
asked
I
the
think,
questions too by our media of, oh, what do you think about this?
right.
Yeah, I think you're there. You're right on with it. It's our sense of entitlement as the U.S. when we talk about sports. We all win. We all expect to win. So you've got a media that's coming in that's not used to covering this sport as much, because we've joked about how many times, like, I've turned on the news and I think the first 20 minutes of the news every night has been soccer related. And while that's awesome, that's great, but it's still, I think the way we report it is still a little naive. And then, yeah, there's a lot of entitlement that talks about, oh, well, we're going to go win this game now just because. Like, no, we haven't earned that right yet on this stage. And I myself get caught up in it too. You know, hey, we look great. If we keep playing like this, we could win it all. But the reality is, we didn't go out and play like that. We haven't been that type of consistent team.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest coming into this match, right? And I think when we dissect it and we break it apart, clearly we peaked in the Paraguay match, right? Clearly we peaked there, but which you can't do in tournament play. But I also feel that along the way in the Australia match, moments in a meaningless Turkey match, and then of course in the Bosnia match was we were dictating, we were setting the pace, right? We were at times the bully. And it was a mentality monster piece. And on this day, versus Belgium, they never, I don't know, they were just in the moment, just too big. Even if the moment was too big for them, right? That doesn't excuse the lack of fight, right? You're in a match. Elias was talking about it, 2-1, right? And it's just kind of the body language. That's what stood out to me. That's what's screaming to me is the body language, right? Malik Tillman's. That's why I said what let out a lot of the air was Malik Tillman gets his goal 1-1, and then boom, 61 seconds later, they come right back and get scored on. We get scored on again, and I felt like that was really the ultimate deflator, really. And then the third goal was just the final nail in the coffin. But the body language, the fight, the heart, was it there? Because in the end, that's what as Americans, we want to see. Obviously, we want to see winners, but we also want to see people who are defending, who are doing everything they can to win, right? And on that day, in terms of the body language, in terms of the game plan, but we got to give Belgium their flowers. They had a great game plan. They executed a great game plan, and they punished us for any mistake we made. So that can't get lost either. So
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's almost in contrast, and I hate, I'm kind of glad Rafa's not here, but, you're watching the end of that Mexico game, and they have everybody in the box, and you can tell they are still going after it. And even though they lose, I think that they were able to walk away from that game of, okay, it was two mistakes, but we threw everything we had at this game. And I think that's the difference. And, I think back to like, in the Champions League this year when Barcelona was playing at home against Atletico, the fans are applauding their team after a 2-1 loss because they saw the effort the team was putting in to go and try to win the game, right? Even though it doesn't come off. And I think that to everyone would agree is that it's the way that we lost this game. It's the way that it didn't even look like we belonged out there. You've been playing, you're in this position, you have all eyes on you, and you go out there and it looks like you are what should have, it's what everyone expected how these Cape Verde and, DR Congo games were going to go, but it was the U.S. that got embarrassed by one of the big dogs and not these little tiny 500,000, inhabitant cities. If DR Congo can go the distance with England, why can't we go the distance with Belgium? I mean, to me, like that, to me is just, it's absolutely unacceptable. And there has to be changes. There has to be consequences for some of these players. And it can't just be you're aging out Tim Ream. He was going to age out anyway, right? Like whether we won the whole thing or not, this was going to be his last World Cup. But there now has to be ramifications for these players because there has to be a standard in the program that if this happens, you will not be back in this team. You will not be allowed to represent our country again if you put a performance like that. And that has to be the standard.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and I think you see that in these other countries, the really good ones.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and I feel in the end when I step back, I've probably gone through the replay or the highlight version, I should say, probably about 4 times now. And really looking at the body language, looking at trying, because what has this tournament really been about? A lot of it has been the M word, right? Momentums, right? Momentum shifts and water break, pre water break, post water break, halftime adjustments, substitutions, but momentum shifts. We saw multiple in that Egypt Argentina match yesterday, right? Which was a great match to watch. But in the end, there was kind of 2 words or 3 words technically that kind of stood out to me that and this just reinforces what you were talking about, Elias, in terms of how we lost this match. Was I saw a lack of leadership and lack of personal responsibility and collective accountability. That's what I saw on the field. And as coaches, we're trained to see that. We're trained to read that in the body languages of our players, right? We're looking beyond just tactics and the ball, but who wants to be there, right? Who's hiding on the field, right? And in the end, that's what I saw, right? And which makes it really hard. That's a bitter pill to swallow as a U.S. men's national U.S. supporter in general, just because I think as future players and future generations come in, I'm going to sound like old man, get off my lawn guy here, but they have to understand the history, all right, while it was dormant for 40 years, the proud history of this, right, of this program, right? We were there in the very first World Cup in 1930, finished third, right? Obviously different format completely. 1950, we're there for one of the top 3, top 5, arguably upsets, all right, in World Cup history in defeating England, right? An England in which we're still undefeated, unbeaten against in World Cup history, by the way. Uh, then nothing happens for 40 years. Qualify against the odds. Paul Calgeri's goal, right? Trinidad and Tobago finally qualify for the 1990s, and we fight very little expectations. Fight in the 1990 World Cup. 1994, finally get the first win since 1930. All right, beat a very tough Colombia squad, and take Brazil to the limit, the eventual World Cup champion Brazil to the limit 1-0, in which we lost Tab Ramos, Claudio Reyna never played, and then who was it? Eric Winalda, bench, never played that match either, right? Think about that, those names that we just said, right? And lost 1-0 to the eventual World Cup champion, right, on the 4th of July. And I know Brian said he was there. Brian Heyman was there. Then you fast forward 2002, right? Make our deepest run in modern history, make it to the quarterfinals, and we know what happened in the Germany match, right? A Germany match I think did Germany make the semifinal or the final that year in 2002? I can't remember.
They
They
made
made the semifinal because
Yeah.
I believe Brazil defeated France.
Yeah. So that's 2002. 2006 was we lay an egg, obviously, but then look at the fight for 2010, win the group, right? 2014, right? We take Belgium obviously to the limit, right? Round of 16. 2018, whatever, but we come back to 2022 and 2026, all right? Back to back, right? They're tough ones, right? The loss to Netherlands in 2022, and then this one, especially this one. We're talking this one, but it's in these last 2 that I have not recognized, these matches where I have not recognized the program, right? Looking scared, the moment's bigger than you, but also just, I can get all that because we're not in all the Champions Leagues and everything's like what Elias was talking about, those big matches consistently. But that doesn't excuse fight. That doesn't excuse, team, right? That doesn't excuse that. And that's where I felt like Poch was implementing that in this group that sorely needs it. And that's what I think disappoints me, just really disappoints me about this match.
Germany did play Brazil in that final in 2002.
Final. Yeah.
So that's the hard pill to swallow with that one too, because look what could have been. But
Yeah, I know. So, so that takes us really dissecting our thoughts on, on the loss to Belgium. So now when we step back and we start to look at the World Cup as a whole for the U.S. men's national team, let's discuss first, before we get to the good, let's get the bad out of the way, right? Any collective bads over the course of, because we had really looked well for the most part as a whole, over the course of these 4 matches before the Belgium match. But when you put it all together, what's maybe beyond just the Belgium match, which we heavily dissected already, but what's maybe the bad across the entire World Cup? Your thoughts, Elias? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I kind of talk. It's our ability to change the tempo of matches and play at different tempos. I think that we were at our best when the game is open and it's flowing, and we have runners. But then when the game requires something else, how do we change a game? And we talked about that substitutions from Poach, but it's not only just on the substitutions. It's about the ability of the players to recognize those situations and be able to, okay, they're all over us. It's okay to put together 8 passes just for putting together 8 passes. We talk, there's a lot of discourse right now about, possession with a purpose, but sometimes that purpose is taking the sting out of a game, right? You're getting overrun. How do we just put our foot on the ball and take some momentum out of it? To me, I didn't see our ability to play at different tempos in this World Cup. I thought when we were good, we were really good. But then, against Turkey, when we had our backups, weren't able really to create those kinds of chances consistently. Obviously, against Belgium, to me, that's something that I still think that we need to improve upon. And I don't know if that's maybe, player profiling. I don't know what exactly that is, but that was something that I think that we need to improve upon a
In
lot.
this group, going to your point, right? How much of that did you feel was experience or talent level, skill level, I should say, versus maybe awareness and soccer IQ?
I think it always goes back to both, right? Like, the more technical you are, the more comfortable you are with taking an extra touch, with slowing the game down. Um, I think I saw maybe it was a video of Freeman doing some technical work, and I'll have to send it to you guys. But he did not look, even for as good as he is on the ball, he didn't look super comfortable doing technical work, right? And I think for what we would expect from that level of player. So I think that it's still the player profile. We've got to expand our player profile from just athletes to maybe more technicians, but it has to be a blend, right? You have to have both. And I think right now that team that we put out there, besides Christian Pulisic, who would you consider a technician in that starting 11 of the U.S. men's national team? Like, when you profile them, you're like, this guy is just, he's great in between the lines. He's able to slow the game down. So it's developing. Again, you need to have all the different profiles in a solid team. It can't just be all one way or all the other way. So I think, to me, that's a negative outcome, and that's something that needs to be addressed in this next cycle.
Yeah, you talk about profiles. Who was probably meant for that moment in that. I don't know if he would have ever played, but in that moment, who was clearly meant for that moment in that match, that moment versus Belgium that never even made the roster.
Your adopted son, Luna.
Yeah, yeah. I think we all know. I think we all
Yeah.
collectively know that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he would have came in. He maybe would have got a yellow card, but he would have fought, and he would have been able to get his foot on the ball and inject some dynamicism into the game. So, yeah,
He
I
was
mean, I think
taking people on, that's for sure.
yeah,
Or I mean, shit, even a Tim Weah, who, if nothing else, he's a red ass. He's going to go in there. He's going to get into it with somebody, right? Something,
yeah.
life. We don't want dirty players, but life. Fight something. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god. So Wes,
No, I think the biggest thing that it sticks out to me when you look at everything is just that lack of depth that we have, and where we think that we have players. Like, we talk about Awea. I mean, leading into this, I thought he was going to be one of the ones that could come off the bench and provide a lot of depth for us and provide a lot in the attack. And I just didn't see it. I mean, the Turkey match was his match. I get it. He's playing on the left and not as comfortable, where he would rather play on the right. But that still doesn't affect the way you take people on, especially when you get them 1v1. And so I think we need more players. You talk about the technical aspect of the game. We need more players that have that profile of being able to take people on 1v1 and just make this, you know, more of an attacking team if we're going to play the same way we've been playing, like that 3-6-1, stay up in your face, get after it, get on the ball, make people make mistakes. And then the second part of that depth is our depth at center back. The fact that we had to rely on a 38-year-old Tim Ream to play because there really was no clear-cut better option to go with. Somebody's got to be playing next to Chris Richards, and I don't know whether or not we have to throw a bag at Nakai Banks or whatever to get him interested in the one to come play for us, or if he falls out of favor with Germany, we'll have to see what happens with that. But there are players out there that we could go after and try to get and try to make sure that they stay playing for the U.S. Even if it is, we've talked about the battle that we've kind of lost with some of the Hispanic, the Mexican American players, that there's a lot of them that we're losing, and we lost that ever since we lost one of our technical directors and he was not there anymore. So I think that piece, we have to really be strategic about who we're building our rosters around and who now, because we have had this shift from where in 2018 we got rid of the old guard and all this new guard came in with nobody to give them leadership and they've had to figure it out on their own. We need to now be thinking about that transition and who are we bringing in now to teach the Kevin Sullivans, to teach the younger generation of players what it means to be a U.S. men's national team player. So I think that part is. I mean, there's depth all over the field because we can talk about midfield too with Tyler Adams and all that. I think we need to get that kid from Barcelona playing in goal for us the more that we can. What's his name? Diego? How you pronounce
Yeah,
it?
I can't remember the last name because
Yeah.
it's got a lot of letters in it.
It's got a lot, but I mean that kid's there. You know, we've got a lot of exciting pieces. We could go. I mean, Heyman probably be really good about listing all of the names of the kids that we have that have played in our youth system and that we have coming up. But the one glaring thing, I looked at an article and was kind of reading who are the next guys for you to take a look at. And the one glaring thing that I've seen is the majority of those kids that look awesome and look like they're the next ones to play on the U.S. men's national team are all MLS kids. And I think part of that is because they're not even 18 yet, so they can't go overseas. You know, Kevin Sullivan's waiting until he turns 18 before he can go to Man City. But I think once those kids turn 18, if we can get them shipped off and playing against the top level competition, and you want to talk about iron sharpens iron and how that's our issue that we have with our youth system. But we've got to get those guys playing early on so that we're not running into the same situation we have with this group where, yeah, they now are playing at the top, some of the top clubs in the world, but are they being effective on those clubs? You could argue that Pulisic has his moments, you know, but outside of that, Tillman's looked great at times. Weston does great things at Juventus, but what about the rest of them? Like, is Dest really consistent when he plays overseas and playing on some of those teams? I know Weah's not. He's not really an everyday starter with them. So I think that's the biggest thing is can we get our best players playing to the best of their ability?
Yeah, and not to get it too much into the player development, argument, but I mean, I do think, there is a discourse going on around right now, like, well, why are women so competitive versus our men? And then it goes to, then people start talking about college soccer or Head Start or whatever. But the reality is, if you even look at the under 20 women's World Cup rosters or the under 23 women's World Cup rosters, those are all NWSL kids. Now, the difference between an NWSL kid and an MLS kid is NWSL is probably top 3 leagues in the world, right? So you look at, I was at the gym the other day and they had, I think it was a Bay FC team on, and they had Kennedy Fuller, who's like 18 years old, but who has been professional since she was 16. And they had Chloe Pfeiffer, who I think is like 20 maybe, but has probably been playing professionally since she was 16 as well. So, like just to kind of piggyback, how do we get our kids playing in professional environments at the top kids, right? And that's where, where I think that some of this youth development system and pay to play and all that is missing the mark. To win World Cups, you've got to get your top 0.01% of players in the right spots. That's really where you're looking at. And our top 0.01% of players right now are having to come from overseas. It's harder to get those kids when we have kids in the U.S., but we can't send them to the right place because of all the child labor laws or whatever bureaucratic red tape there is. So yeah, I think we've got to find a way to get these top talents in top environments early on.
No, I think you're dead on with that. With the women's game being that's one of the top leagues in the world, and I think people ask why were the women so dominant so early on. Let's be real. The rest of the world did not put women's soccer ahead of anything. They didn't care about women's development in sports. That's starting to change, and I think that's why you're starting to see the gap close between the U.S. and some of the other big countries because they're actually investing in developing talent a little bit differently. So I think you're dead on though with that. I think the younger these kids are, they've got to be playing against the top level in the world, and the only way that's going to happen is if we fix that bureaucratic red tape and we start to develop an actual elite league. Because, like you say all the time, Hector, if everything is elite, then no one's elite. So
Yeah.
let's get rid of some of these. I don't know. Everything. Again, we could talk for hours on how we need to overhaul this whole thing, but a lot of it does start with that. We have elite clubs here.
Yeah, yeah. There was there was a what was it? Kind of like an infograph floating around that I saw back in the spring of elite level across all the different the multiple leagues, and I know there's been some renaming and rebranding under second league, third league levels for ECNL, but they all had about I'd say about 70% of them all had one word in common, one thing in common: elite, all elite. And I was just like, wow, okay. So I don't know. So it's always, and that's where again that's a whole other conversation, but parent education as well, right? So, but okay. One of the things that did want to mention, if you are in here, thank you for joining us live. This is episode 17 of the Red, White, and Crew podcast. We're live. So in here, share your questions, comments, insight, anything you might have for us. Thank you for joining us. Did want to give a quick shout out to our title sponsor, our partners at Goal Getter. If your family is navigating the girls' soccer recruiting process, Goal Getter provides the education tools and guidance families need to better understand the recruiting landscape and make informed decisions. So again, speaking back to parent education, right? You have a young one who says they want to play college level or beyond. Maybe they have higher aspirations to be in the NWSL one day, right? Goal Getter can help you in that recruiting process, and you can get more information on their website at goalgetter.com, as well as on Instagram and X at goalgettersoccer. Again, their website at goalgetter, GOLGETR.com. All right, boys. So we look at so that was the hash out on the bad. What about the good? Right, there are some milestones in terms of the program, the U.S. Men's National Team program that comes out of 2026, but the ones that maybe stand out to you, if you could pick like one or two big ones, good ones, what would you say is the good takeaways, the really pluses from this World Cup as it relates to the U.S. Men's National Team?
I think identity in the way we played and the way we won those first couple games, I think is big. I mean, I think that's the team that we all want to see. That's the team we all dreamed of us having. So that identity and the way that they play, I think that gets the fans excited. It's more of an exciting way to watch soccer too. I talk about it all the time with football coaches that I talk with. Other sports are like, I just don't like soccer because you go so long and it's 0-0. But that doesn't happen as often as people think. And I think when you get more people,
Not in this World Cup.
no, I know, not well. Depends on what round of the World Cup you're playing into, right?
Two. I think two games have been 0-0, right? Two or three.
I remember Spain was the first one. Spain and I think Cape Verde was the very first one, and then I can't remember, but I think that sounds about right. I think it might be
Colombia and Switzerland was the only other one that I can remember.
It might be no more than three. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just for me, I think going out of this, the way that we played in those first couple games. Obviously, not the Belgium game. Every other game, the way that we played, the identity that we have, the sense of urgency, the pressing, all of that was super fun to watch. And I think that's what I think we can grow off of. So that's really exciting. I think it is like it always is whenever there's a World Cup, especially when it's on your home soil. Like you get new fans to the game. So, what can we do as a soccer society to keep including them in that and to keep growing the game that way? I think getting out and, you know, going to support your local clubs, I think is a big one, whether it be the MLS team or USL. And the fact that USL is going to promotion relegation, I think that's another one that's going to be really exciting and fun to watch. Um, so, there's a lot of things that are exciting about being a soccer fan in the U.S. right now. Um, but those would be my two highlights: just the way that we played, and then the fan involvement that we had. I mean, I don't know the last time I don't think I've ever seen a game where we were losing like that, 3-1, 4-1, and you still hear the crowd chanting and trying to push them to go for more.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fan engagement is a huge one, right? So how do you build off of it? You know, how do we keep these people from just becoming once every 4 years fans, right? I think I'm going to agree with Wes. I thought the way that we are trying to play, I think fits our culture. It fits the ethos of being American, right? We're going to be fast. We're going to be direct. We're going to go at you nonstop. Now, can we continue to improve that philosophy? You know, you talked about Plan B. Plan B should be making Plan A better. You know, how do you get Plan A to work? And I think that that's where we need to be. Is okay. We obviously, I think, Poach, whether he stays or whether he goes, I think we would like to see him stay. Maybe even just for a Copa America cycle. You know, to continue building, and then maybe you turn it over with 2 years left. But I think that how, you know, building on that is really important. And then I thought that there were some young players. Balagoon came in. We didn't, you know, there was question marks coming in. Is he really our guy? I think he's our guy. I think if he can stay healthy and he can improve. He's relatively young. You know, one of the biggest Barcelona Twitter accounts is saying, why are we not going after this Balagoon guy? You know, and I'm like, that's crazy that somebody is saying Barcelona needs to go buy Balagoon instead of, you know, Julian Alvarez. So,
Yeah, it's been the same with Olise, right, in France. They were talking about how is he not playing for the England, right? He's like,
yeah.
they're saying that's the big knock. They're saying no part of this guy is really French, and yet
Yeah.
he's killing it for the French.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tillman, I thought was huge. I thought he's showing pieces. Freeman, Chris Richards. I mean, you've got a good core in there that if you can clean some things up, maybe shuffle around the profiles around them. But for me, there's still a lot of positives. I do think that there is a little bit of overreaction of, oh, we suck, or we're soft, or here we go again, we're never going to be great, or but the truth is usually a little bit more in the middle than where you start out with, right? So it's just building on the good things we did, cleaning up the bad things, right? Like how do we stop those mistakes from happening again? Is it selecting different players? Is it scheduling harder warm-up games going into the World Cup? Did not having to qualify hurt the U.S., right? Did not having to go and play Mexico in qualifying, to go to Trinidad and Tobago where the grass is 7 inches long and there's 4 cows inside of the goal while you're trying to play, right? So, I mean, some of this is just, you've got to continue to build on it, and you've got to, now we shouldn't be scheduling some of these cupcake teams. We need to be going and scheduling the best teams, and trying to continue to build that way. But there's a lot of good things, and it's just important that we focus on those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of it will be brewing potentially with. We'll see if it's made official that they'll be bringing Copa America, Copa America here in 2028. That will help. I see on some level, right, with the tournament field expanding to 48 now. and with the talks of 64, which I wouldn't doubt knowing FIFA. But I see there has to be some more, mer- I guess, not emergence, but mergeness, for lack of better words, right? Better collaboration. There inevitably there's going to have to be on CONMEBOL's side to push to work with CONCACAF more, right? Because otherwise, what we're looking at in this new format is we're looking at six, because even with qualifying, right, even with us having to qualify for 2030 now, you got to remember that it goes from 3 to 6, right, for the World Cup, right? So, and and I think what does CONMEBOL get? I think out of their 10, I think they get 6 too, don't they? I
Hmm.
think they get
Yeah,
6.
I think
So so they're somehow going to have to ask that question about, hey, what about us? We're thought to be the stronger, right? The stronger confederation. How can we work, or how can we dip into more of CONCACAF's, I guess, numbers per se? So I don't know. So keep an eye on that. But I think that's something to be there's something there to be, I guess, monitored as it relates to qualifying and beyond. Maybe that's beyond 2030, but I think that's that in and then some people have said, hey, what would happen if CONCACAF and CONMEBOL actually merged, right? That would be that would be something else. But
what
yeah,
does qualifying look like too? Like with six
right.
teams, that was what our final one was. That was always the hex, right?
Yeah.
You got six teams, got to battle it out for three spots, and then one of you might get a playoff spot. But man, how does that even work? I don't think I've even looked at the format yet to see
Yeah.
what qualifying looks like and how it's going to happen.
Well, knowing
Yeah,
CONCACAF, they haven't shared that transparency yet. I have
yeah,
not.
but that's the big thing we talk about. Why do some of these European teams struggle, and why do the giants, bow out early? You talk about the difference between CONMEBOL and CONCACAF, and then overseas in UEFA is UEFA teams. The high teams are not seeing any of the tougher teams. They don't play each other like that
Hmm.
for qualifying. The only way they do is if somehow they get bumped down into a playoff situation. But Germany's not playing France.
I think that's why they added the Nations League.
Yeah,
That was the reason they added it. No, but something else that I just thought of. Hopefully the global impact of U.S. soccer, if you take away the game on Monday, is that this team is not too far away from being a consistent quarterfinal team, right? I really don't think that we're that far away. So maybe you have American kids living overseas in those academies that now you get an Olise type, right? That you wouldn't get before.
Yeah.
So, and not saying that there's an Olise out there for the US, that would be great.
that would be
But
phenomenal. Yeah.
right, but maybe there's a kid out there that they're looking at their pathway in the pros and they're like, well, my grandma's American and I like the way that they play and I think I could go help them out and take them over the hump and get to play in a World Cup and get to play for contenders.
I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw in our chat. I dropped the video late last night. My services to return overseas to Europe have been asked. I don't know if you saw that video. So I'll let I'll let Aaron tell you about it later. But yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, there's certain advantages that we have there with American. I mean, look at our roster right now, right? Look at our roster right now. But yeah, I don't disagree. I think some of the potential, right, and a big grain of salt, because we seem to see this every 4 years. The pay to play argument being propelled. That now can the same media, the same traditional media that was saying it's like, hey, we can really win it, we can really do this, and we can really do that, that were kind of misinforming, right, the casuals, the general public, to a certain extent. Can they really continue? Don't let this pay to play process, the current version of our pay to play model, maybe don't let it die, right? Put the pressure, apply the pressure, right? We shall see, because you know how it is in this cycle. It's just once you're beyond 24, 36 hours, it's old news. So push the narrative of pro rel more, right? So we talked about in the USL. It's going to be modified, obviously, but the real question is in the education, and parents have to see it. So Doesn't matter if you're a broadcaster, if you're traditional media, if you're a podcaster, if you're a coach, right? In speaking, educating the casuals, educating parents, educating your players on the closed. So when people really ask, well, if our best, people say, imagine if our best athletes, did this and did that. The old narratives, right? The reality, it all starts and ends with our current system, the closed system. And if the people who are most benefiting from it and making the money, they're not going to vote themselves out, you know?
No, they aren't. Yeah,
No,
it's the
it
hardest
all,
part.
yeah, it comes from pressure, right? It comes from collective community pressure, awareness, and education. So, but we all throw up our hands in the air and just kind of think. And then the cop out, the real cop out is, oh, we're not a soccer nation. It's not really our sport. BS. It's like, who's the best baseball player in the world right now? He's not American. Go look at probably the top ten NBA players in the world, in the country, in the world right now. Probably what, six, seven of them aren't American, right?
Yeah, I mean,
NFL, and yeah,
I think that argument always upsets me about this is not we're not sorry this is why we can't compete. Like, I think one of the things that makes our country great is the idea of American exceptionalism, right? We are excellent at everything we do, but then when it comes to soccer, it's well, we don't really care about it, so that's why we're not good. Like, we light up our own athletes, we light up our kids all the time for, well, you're just saying you just don't try so that way you don't have an excuse, right? And that's the softest excuse ever. And I hate that when it comes to the World Cup that that's the excuse that everyone throws
yeah,
around.
yeah. It
Well, we
becomes a
didn't really try anyway.
self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah,
Yeah, we didn't try anyway. So, I mean, what does it matter? If we have LeBron James playing out there, well, LeBron James probably is not built to play soccer. Let's be real. So, uh, it's just, yeah. Anyway, I got on a rant there for a second. My bad.
no, you're good, man. I think, and you're right. You're completely right. In the end, that's what we call BS, bullshit, right? I think
Yeah.
because that's the easy way out. That's the cop out. That's the lazy way. That's the every 4 years I'll tune in argument, right? BS, BS. Aaron, you had something, bud?
No, I
No,
agree
okay.
100% with all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to transition here. So the next piece. So where do we go? What's next? Where do we go from here? We've alluded to some of it. We've talked about different. So we're going to look at it in two portions, right? Or three portions, I should say, from the player pool perspective, from the coach perspective, and then just the program as a whole perspective. We've hit on bits and pieces of all of those up to this point, but so first thing first. So here are the projected ages of the 2026 World Cup, the U.S. Men's National Team World Cup squad. This is what their projected ages are 4 years from now in 2030. So, thoughts? I know I had shared this with you boys a while back, but thoughts on this in terms of any key pieces or ones or two, something that kind of surprised you in this as we look forward to 2030?
No, I think there not much surprises on my end. I kind of know the age and know these players quite well. I think what we have to make sure we don't do is have what happened in 2018, where you just bring in a whole new crop. We've got to meld the two. Like, we've got to bring in some new guys to join this group of aging players. And if we can get a good mix at the next World Cup, I think we're going to be in a really good situation. I think Balogun being only 28 next World Cup is great for us. Ricardo Pepi 27. Pepe's got to get more consistent. I love that kid. I mean, I love watching him play. I've been watching him play since he was 16. So I think we've got some really, really good pieces. I think Tyler Adams being 31 makes me concerned because we really don't have a replacement for him. Yeah, no, kind of what you expected. I actually expected Roldan to be a lot older than 35. Why do I feel like he's 38 now?
Probably because he's hurt all the time.
Probably.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think Tyler on this list, the one when we talk about our depth levels and how we play and how we want to play, and we talked about it. Tyler Adams going into this tournament, Tyler Adams was the one guy you cannot lose. But after 4 games of shining in different moments, well, 3 games, he finally had a bad game, right? Finally, well, and even then, I use that term loosely, right? Because I felt like he showed up in moments, and I think maybe Malik Tillman obviously got the goal, showed up in moments, but it was still bad all around, right? Maybe Berhalter had some moments when he was subbed in, right? I forgot. I'll be honest with you. I know he came in right at halftime, but I forgot Gio was on the field when after right around when we got the third we gave up the third goal. I forgot he was on the field. So, Elias,
Yeah, I mean, I think all the players that are under 30 going into the next World Cup. I think that they have a good chance of continuing for another cycle. All those players around 30, 31. I think that you can't bring in more than a third of those guys, is how I kind of feel about. I think you need some of them, obviously, right? You can't have a group of all 20 something year olds. But if you brought this exact roster in again, one, the complacency, two, there's already holes in it. But I think that, if you look at Malik Tillman, that's a guy that you can build your team around, right? Alex Freeman is only 21 this World Cup. Imagine the growth from 21 to 25, especially as a defender. Chris Richards, 26 going into 30. I think that there's still a lot of room for growth for these players. Honestly, if you just looked at the ages for the next World Cup, you're probably sitting around 29 and a half. 30 if you take out Tim Ream, if you take out Matt Turner, if you take out Christian Rodon, you're probably sitting right around 30. So it's old, but it's not super old if you were to just, for some reason, roll this whole group over again. But there does needs to be some freshening. I think, like I said, probably about half of this roster should return. It's hard to predict 4 years in the future. Some of these players could gain form, some of them could lose form, but I don't think you bring more than half of this roster back, which I think is fine. I think that every 4 years you should probably have about a half a turnover, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. When we saw this, when I saw this list when it first came out a couple of weeks ago, I forgot Zendejas was 28. I don't know why in my head I thought he was about 25, 26.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Wes, you got anything else to add to this one?
No, not necessarily this, but the new transfer news that's kind of coming out right now with Balogun is talks of PSG, Chelsea, and Tottenham are all interested in him right now and kind of making him a top target. And
Tottenham
one,
just got Rafael Leao today.
Tottenham, yeah,
Yeah, Tottenham. That one was official, I think, right? Not
Yeah.
speculation, official.
yeah. I think the
Yeah,
one
there's been a few of them.
that you'll like, Hector, is I see Holland is opening to joining Real Madrid.
Well, I felt like, well, he's been on the record for saying that for years, right? But it was going to be post. I mean, the timing is right with Pep leaving,
Yep.
because I think he had such a good relationship with Pep too. So, but that's always been, just like Elias, that's always been his dream club, right? Is making it to Real Madrid. So, so we'll see. Does it line up? I think that's contingent upon Mourinho clearing house. Because my gut feeling is that Vinny's not staying at Real Madrid, or they're going to find a way, unless he's willing to really rework that contract. They're not going to let him just go free. So they're gonna deal him out.
I think
So
that'll be
I
a
don't
big
know.
key piece for us, though, is where do some of our guys end up after this World Cup and after this cycle that goes through? I think Malik Tillman's in for a big payday the way that he's played, and he'll get to move on to a bigger club. I haven't seen any news or anything. It's just my gut feeling. But yeah, where do our guys end up? Where's Pulisic going to end up? Because I know there's a lot of talk of him going back to the Premier League.
He needs to get out of Italy. I think for the type of player that he is, he needs to be in Spain or England. Honestly, I think a move to Spain would be the best for him.
La Liga, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think I don't think with his propensity to be injured, I don't think the Premiership is good for him. The style there, La Liga, I think he'd be a better fit. So, but what's he being linked to closely? Is it NYC? Is it NYCFC? I think.
I saw that too. Yeah, I think the move to the MLS would be. It's not yet. Eventually,
Yeah.
yes, but I don't know, not yet.
Well, I know the talk was that Milan is going to extend him for a year so they can have that second year there to deal him basically. kind of a little bit kind of like what's going on with Benny. So where they can basically deal him and not just lose him on an open transfer, right? So I don't know. We'll see. So, but I agree with you. I think La Liga would make sense for him. Premier League, I'd see him having a hard time staying fit for, for a full 38 matches.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're going to move on. So next piece here. So we talked about 2026, the 2030 ages for the current roster from this World Cup. Now, some of the early, very, very, very early, way too early projections or thoughts on this, courtesy of Golazo America. So, 2030 World Cup roster possibilities here. So, I guess that's the guy you were talking about, right? The keeper out of Barcelona. Is it Coaching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I think that needs to be the guy early on. Let's get him in and get him looks.
yeah. Thoughts on the surf? Obviously, way too early, but just thoughts on this in terms of kind of who gets your attention here.
I mean, Banks on there for Augsburg. I just don't. From everything I've heard, he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna stay with Germany."
Was it ever confirmed if he officially turned down? It was always floating around that he had turned down the invite for the World Cup roster. I don't know. Was that ever confirmed for Nokai Banks?
I heard that he did turn it down, but I don't think it was confirmed.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Forwards, we need a new forward. We need somebody new in that group.
We see our poster boy here in Diego Luna. I don't know if you guys saw that. Rafa had shared that with us about Rayados, right? Monterrey making the move for him, and Real Salt Lake shot it down.
Really?
Yeah, I guess they want more. They think he's worth more. I think they want more money.
Well, he
So,
might be.
so as of right now, he's still. I think that's one who's got to get out of MLS.
He does have to get out of the MLS. I think a move to League MX is great for him. He does. I think he's hit his ceiling at Real Salt Lake. I'll tell you that Xavier Gozo, though, that dude can play. I'll be interested to see his kind of what he does over the next couple years.
How old is he?
He's one of the youngins too, because he was one of the ones on the name that they were talking about of him being one of the next go-to.
Yeah, I think this first game that we play after is going to kind of tell us a lot about the direction we're going to go in.
Have they announced already friendlies for that? The fall.
I don't know.
I know different teams are starting to put those out because I saw in Mexico. I don't know if it's confirmed, but Mexico's supposed to be going return trip to Wembley to play England in September.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But that's unofficial.
I'm surprised I don't see Nico on here at all. Nico Sakaris, the central midfielder out of San Jose. He's kind of been one of those on the youth level that he's played a lot for the U19s and just all the youth U.S. men's national teams.
So I guess that's the question. That's the question. Go ahead, Wes.
I was going to say Gaga Slonina too, the other goalkeeper. He's the one that went to Chelsea and now he's back on loan from Chelsea. But
well, and that's the thing, right? This is just a small snapshot, I imagine. The question will be ultimately how many beyond what we have here will be, or total, right? Just a total number. How many will really truly be in the pool over the course of the next probably 2.5, 3 years?
Yeah.
So
I think
Aljamain was a big loss, man. That was a big loss.
Yeah, it was. You got to watch the New York Red Bulls. They have, I think there's like 3 players right now who are 15 or 16 that are starting for them and playing, and they look really good for young players.
I saw one of them who's I think the youngest player in MLS history to have a hat trick. I don't know if that was Red Bulls or not.
It might have been Julian Hall. I mean, Julian has looked great.
Could be. And the one I've been hearing a lot about has been oh my God, what is his name? Albert, or what is his out of the one in Dortmund right now? Is he on here? I don't even know if he's on here.
He's not on here.
No, he's not. Yeah, see, that's another one. So
there are a lot.
Elias, thoughts?
Yeah, I don't claim to follow MLS a whole lot. I think some of these younger guys on here are MLS guys, and so I think it's going to be, and I hope that it becomes harder to make a roster being on an MLS roster. Caveat being, assuming the MLS doesn't improve, right? If we can improve our domestic league, that would help us a lot. But as it stands right now, I don't think you can be competitive on the world stage with one, two, three, four, five,
It's
six,
10. It's 10. It's 10
10,
total.
10
Out of the
MLS.
26, this is 10 MLS. Yeah.
I don't know that you can be competitive on the world stage with, 40% of your roster being MLS based.
Okay, but I will tell you, looking at that roster, you take out Diego Luna and Berhalter, the rest of those guys have to be here because of their age,
Yeah,
because of
but yeah, no, but I'm saying I would hope that in 4 years they continue to find and find the moves to your Crystal Palaces to you
sure.
know so not necessarily saying that these guys aren't deserving to be on the roster. I think we just have been talking about, right, how do we take it to the next level? How do we take these young stars and get them to the next level? I think that is the big thing there.
I would argue too, though. I don't think the MLS is as far down as what people like to say it is. Like for me, if you're going to make that argument, I want to talk about how many MLS games have you watched, you know,
Yeah.
through the whole game. Tell me how many you've watched and how across the league what you've seen. Because in my opinion, I've been going to MLS games since, gosh, probably 2002,
I ain't got no
2000.
Apple TV, man. That's what people say. I ain't got Apple TV.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I am not an MLS hater by all. I go watch the games all the time. Now do I sit down and, like you said, how many times do I turn it on the TV? Not a whole lot. I do think though that if you look at the teams that are winning consistently, they have players in the biggest clubs in the world.
Sure.
And I think that that's fair, right? Like, if you look at France, the majority of their team is not probably playing in the French league. They're playing in the Premier League, in La Liga. So, and that's not that the French league is poor or anything. And that's kind of where I
It
would
is
love
down.
to,
It is down right now. I will say
yeah.
that.
But I would love to see us get some of these young kids at a massive club like a Liverpool, at a massive club like a Real, at a Barcelona. Some of these young starlets at one of those massive clubs where they are the main person there. Because I do think that that carries over into national team rosters. When you have a guy that you're like, he is one of the best in the world. And I know that that position, we are going to win that battle every single time. And so
Mhm.
that's where I think the next step is, and not necessarily that we can't have any MLS guys. It's just, can we get these young kids that are in these MLS clubs to a massive superpower club where they come in and they're like, we're here to freaking win the whole thing because that's what I'm used to.
I think you're starting to see that trend though of those younger players being more ready to go join those teams. Like a
Yeah.
Julian Hall. I mean, a kid is 17 years old. He just made the MLS All Star game.
Yeah.
Same thing with Xavier Gozo. He made the All Star team as well this year. So it's getting there. I think that one thing that really is holding us back is that piece where, all right, well, they can play when they're 15, 16 here, but we can't give them a visa to go play over there.
Yeah.
Hey, when does Kevin Sullivan? I know it's when he turns 18 to go to Man City, but when is that? When does he turn 18?
I
Any
think it's
idea?
2 more years. I think he's only 18 right now.
No, he's six. Is he 16 right now?
He's 16 right now. Maybe it might even be 16 right now.
I thought he was like. I thought it was by just one more season. So I don't know. But, okay, yeah, because that's another example of someone who's
Have you
not
seen footage
on
of him
this list.
practicing with Man City?
That's someone that is on this list that won't be, or that's someone that is not on this list that'll definitely be in the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Obviously.
he's 16 right now. September. Oh, no way. Him and I share the same birthday. He was born 2009, September 28th.
Oh, interesting.
So that's
So
already
he'll,
he's got one more year to wait. But I
no,
mean,
so it is one more year. Okay.
have you seen
But
film
it,
training with them already?
Ooh.
Of Sullivan? Because he's gone over there and trained a little bit.
And
Oh, yeah.
I've seen little minor, very little clips. Have you? Have you seen a lot?
Yeah, I've seen a couple, and he looked apart, man. He doesn't look out of his depth.
Yeah, and I
Now,
think that that's what's exciting is that we have these young kids on this list that are already playing professionally at 15, 16, 17 years old. But again, right, we're talking about how do we take the next step? How do we go a little bit beyond where we are? Instead of Crystal Palace, can we get Liverpool, right? Instead of Villarreal, can we get Atletico Madrid? You know, instead of Bayer Leverkusen, can we get Bayern Munich, right? So it's just how do we get two, three, four players from they're in the top leagues to they're at the top clubs, right? So I think that that's the next step we need to take. But hopefully, with the amount of these young kids that are doing that, and I do think there's becoming more willingness from the MLS clubs to take chances on these younger players, which I think is huge for us, right? So, I do think we have to give them credit. Everyone wants to crap on the MLS, but you got to give them credit if they're starting to bring in these 15, 16-year-olds. Well, now we're talking about, well, we're preparing these kids for the next 10 years and we're not just trying to win the next game, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that that's a good positive step in the right direction.
I think that is the approach that FC Dallas has taken, and people have criticized them quite a bit because they haven't won a major title outside of the U.S. Open Cup. We haven't won an MLS Cup, but that approach has been what it is we're going to develop these guys for long term. And there's a lot of young guys that are in their system right now that I think are about to make that leap professionally as well. But New York Red Bulls has done a lot. I don't know if you can discount the fact that they're getting the likes of Messi and all these other players that are now coming over. I get to see Griezmann here next Wednesday. I get to see him play because Orlando City's coming to Mansfield actually to play FC Dallas in a scrimmage game, kind of before the MLS season kicks back up again. They're doing like just a scrimmage game, and so
When is
Griezmann's
that? When is that, Wes?
July 13th. I think it's next Wednesday.
Will you
Uh,
send, if you have ticket information, will you send it to me?
15th. I'm sorry. Yeah. I got some tickets already, so we'll have to talk about that. But it's down in Mansfield at that new stadium that they just built for North Texas SC. So I think what's gone along with that is you got these big time players, big name players that are coming over here, and they're getting to practice and be shoulder to shoulder with some of these young guys. And I think they give some credibility because you don't think like the likes of, I mean, let's just say Griezmann's playing with somebody that all of his former clubs aren't going to call him and be like, what do you think about this young guy? I think that does help us out long term is getting these older guys. And it's not necessarily a retirement league, but it's a place where we can bring some of that older talent in to mix with our young talent and teach them.
yeah, for me, you guys hear me?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got you.
okay, cool. Sorry. Uh, had a momentary pause there. So for me, so two things. One, what kind of stands out to me, so if we're remotely close in this ballpark in late 2029, early 2030, per capita right now, when I look at this list, what concerns me right now is, and not a knock, we're all saying that, right? It's not meant to be like that in terms of MLS, but it does go in line with, I think, what Elias is talking about here in terms of next level. Per capita, when I look at these positions, is the fact that two of the three listed on here are in MLS, right? They got to be playing in different places, right? They got to
Yeah.
be playing in some of these tougher leagues around the world, getting those. But there's layers to this, right? It's one thing to be in there's leagues, there's teams, but then there's also minutes, right? Got to be getting
Yeah.
quality minutes as well. So that's one thing. So goalkeeper specifically, because I do feel like if there's anywhere where we're in a bit of a like legitimate crisis, it's that position, right? Which is so un-American if you know your your American your U.S. men's national team soccer, right?
Yeah, like Diego Cochin, right? Like, yes, he's playing for Barcelona. Johan Garcia is 24 years old. He's not going anywhere. So
Oh, they've loaned him out. Yeah, right.
where's his next move? Where is he going to end up after Barcelona, right? I think that that's great for his development. But like just to kind of piggyback on your point about minutes, Hector, right?
Mhm.
You see the name Barcelona, but 0 minutes in La Liga,
Correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah, but what's good about that, Elias, is as if nothing else, so it looks great on paper, obviously, right? But
yeah,
two, the real one is maybe that's a great place to go to learn to be a pro. You know what I mean?
yep,
So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, but then what happens with his career from there? Where does he go? Does he go to the right? It's so key, right? The next situation that he lands in, right? Agents gotta do some serious work there. So, or do they just loan him out? Do you see that happening?
I think he's played like some with their athletic team, Barcelona Athletic.
Yeah. Yeah, which is third division.
Yeah,
But it would be good if you can bring him in, if you loan him out for a couple years. Let's say you have an injury crisis and now you need a goalkeeper, or he goes and you bring him back in for a preseason and he has a great preseason. But no, I think that the name itself, like that also just adds credibility to our team, right? If we have guys that when you put out this roster, can we get five guys that have Barcelona, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man U, whatever next to them? That changes the makeup of a roster, and we can say what we want, and everyone, these teams they come in and you look at Cat Verdes and whatever, but England never really thought that they would ever lose that game against DR Congo, right? Even when they were down 1-0, they never really, I don't think, thought that they were going to lose it because they knew who they were. And so that's where we need to get to is when we come in and it's like, we're winning this game. We're not scared of anybody. We're not going to get beat 4-1 in a round of 16 game because the lights are too big for us. So, and that starts with where they're playing, their football the other 9 months of the year that they're not with the national team.
looks
Right.
like Diego's headed to Denmark too. By the way, for the next season,
Okay.
Who's
looks
that?
like he's going to
Okay.
their Diego. He's going to Danish Superliga.
Oh, okay.
What they
And
say?
how old is he?
He's 20.
Yeah. So that's a good spot at 20.
Bad spot at 20 to be playing. You're playing against some decent. I mean, Brøndby
Yeah.
IF, Copenhagen.
Yeah. Any anybody else stand out to? Is there anyone that you look at on here right now that is not who's missing, not who's not on here, but that is on here that you really truly hope maybe should not be in the mix? Either maybe age, form, just whatever, just isn't a good fit. Anyone here?
Oh yeah, I think we need to move on from Mark McKenzie. I think if he hasn't made the jump yet, I don't know when is he going to. Another one I would say would Max Arston. Max Arston's got to get out of Columbus Crew if he wants the chance to play. Joe Scally and hot take, whether you like it or not, Gio Reyna's got to do something different if he wants to still be included in this list.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't think you can bring him for a third World Cup to be a break glass in case of emergency player.
Yeah,
I
not yet.
just,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's what he's been for the past two. He's not good enough defensively to go and play. He's not dynamic enough to really stretch defenders. For me, it's Gio Reyna, yeah, Max Arston, Joe Scally, those three. But other than that, I think that the returners are the ones that I think
yeah.
can walk away from this World Cup for the most part saying I did well.
yeah. I think everybody in that midfield, and you adding Tanner Tessman, I think even Berhalter's earned that right. I think he's going to move soon. I don't think he's going to be at Vancouver long, but I think he's earned that right to be back.
Yeah. Any on here on this list that you feel is prime for a move this summer that you can it hasn't been announced but you could see it really like not that you would like to see but you think is going to happen. Whether I mean and I'm talking about going overseas the MLS guys that is
Talk
that's
about
going
MLS
maybe
guys
going
going overseas. I think Berhalter is one that will probably be the first to go. Because I was hearing reports of that before this World Cup that they were looking at shipping him off, and I think the way he played and things that he brought to the game for the U.S., I think somebody's going to jump on that in a heartbeat.
yeah yeah yeah
Julian
all
Hall
right
would be another one, but he's just too young. I mean, Julian Hall, I think, is the most ready player to move right now. If you haven't watched him play, you need to go watch a New York Red Bulls game. He's exciting.
yeah I've seen just small clips on them. I have definitely not seen. I'm the first to say that I don't watch enough MLS bits and pieces all around sprinkled in. But I don't watch it. I get the clips. I see some of the highlights. The good and but I don't watch enough, especially when we start talking about these guys specifically. So, all
Yeah.
right, the
And
last piece. Oh, go ahead.
And just to pick, how does the MLS build off of the World Cup, right? I mean, we're talking two big soccer guys between me and Hector that are saying, yeah, we watch it if it's on, right? But how do they build it to where, okay, I'm going to build my Sunday around to catch FC Dallas play, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what I do right now to watch Barcelona. So how do we build that? And maybe it is pro rel, but how does the MLS build off of this, piggyback off of this? I don't think Alex Freeman lasts at Villarreal for too long. I know he just moved there in January, so obviously I think this summer is probably out of the question. But with La Liga's strict, financial fair play rules, his value just skyrocketed. And if you're Villarreal and you know that money's always going to be tight, you could see him gone after a year to a
Does he
big
stay in La
club.
Liga? Does he stay in La Liga though? Do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I think his athletic profile, he could play in the Premier League. He could play in the Bundesliga. He's a top five league player. I think he's just gonna make a jump to a bigger club.
Yeah,
But I don't think that he's at Villarreal for more than another year or two. He's at a big club by the time the next World Cup rolls around, I think.
I would agree. Yeah. So I'm going to follow up this on what you said about MLS. So, and let's jump in here. Help me
Yeah.
out on this. So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
one of the things. So my big thing is going with 2030 in mind, right? Beyond the pro rel, all that stuff, right? It is what it is. The academies, the pay to play, it relates to MLS. Something to think about when 2030 arrives. How much of the impact will the league will look different from the standpoint of the schedule change finally happens, right? We'll be on board with the international calendar, right? So and is implemented this year, isn't it? Don't they play like a small mini season
So yeah, they're going to actually
with
finish it out
2027?
this year. So November it'll be done, and then they will do that mini season. I think kick it off in February. It'll be done by May, and
Uh-huh.
then the following into 2027 in the fall will be the first time they start.
Start back up in August.
The
Yeah.
same as overseas international.
Yeah. So when this season ends, the current season ends, they will restart. Like are they starting a little bit earlier, a couple of weeks earlier, and just some smaller ending? And yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
it's just like a mini season that they'll rush to the end. I think it's
yeah.
only like 18 games that they'll play.
Be interesting to see how they do that. So my question on that is based upon that, right? How does that come 2030, right? The player pool, everything. How does that impact? Kind of a tight turnaround, I get it, but how much does that impact the level of play? How much more are some of these MLS players who are maybe playing at a high level that maybe make their way onto the roster or in form, and then your followers for the league? Does that have an effect on followers, fans, supporters watching the league? Right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see the effect of the change, what happens to it, especially with you're taking that 2 month break in the middle of the season, because
Right.
a lot of places can't play games because it's way too cold. Um, but I think the MLS did a good job of understanding what this World Cup was going to be and the hype that was going to be around it. I think what you've seen with a lot of the stadiums have seen massive upgrades. I mean, FC Dallas is in the middle of one right now, but we're not the only one that's out there up improving their fan engagement and improving the experience of you coming to watch a game. I think Seattle and Portland have been miles ahead of everyone else in the MLS as far as fan engagement and the way that they get up for the game, stand and watch the whole 90. I mean, I hate on them because I hate playing them. I hate listening to the people talk up there, but they do a great job with what they're doing. And so I think you're seeing that a lot of these clubs realized we're going to have to do something different. We're going to have to change the way our stadium looks, and we're going to have to market things a little bit differently to get this to be ready for when 2026 happens. And now we have all these guys that are interested in soccer. What can we do to bring them on board? So you're going to see that, I think, a big push very quickly. FC Dallas has done a great job in their season ticket holders and how they take care of their members. I mean, just we probably had the most access to any of the FIFA World Cup games at premium prices. Um, I know myself being able to pay $1,000 to go sit in a suite on the field was insane, and there was no other club that was doing that. So I think what you're going to see is this marketing is going to be really good to keep that fan engagement going. And I think the more that you have the fan engagement, the more they're going to have the finances to be able to buy good players and to keep developing. I think the way our MLS Next system works when you're talking about MLS Next One, because that's the one that I believe where kids need to shoot for trying to play. I don't think MLS Next 2 and all that. That's just the money grab. That's where you go into it. I don't think there's a point in anybody playing for that. But I think we are seeing that growth in the U.S. starting to happen. I think where we need to pay attention as followers of the game is we need to start watching these U15 games. We need to start watching these U17 games, U19, all the different world. Man, I love watching U19 World Cup. I love watching the U17 World Cup. I think it's actually U20 and U17. I have loved for years watching those. I think one that you need to be looking out for another player is Nolan Norris for FC Dallas. They've kind of toyed him around at a couple different positions, but he's another one that has played center back and he's captained one of our U.S. teams at the U17 World Cup. So you're going to see guys like that that are stepping into the big time. And I think if we put more of our emphasis on those type of players and then development, it's going to get better. And I think the MLS is moving up in what they're doing. But you are right that I think we're not to a point where we can just rely on the MLS completely to build ourselves a roster. We have to have people playing overseas. So,
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at the list, when you look at a map of clubs, not just MLS, but professional clubs around the country, some people are surprised how
yeah,
many there
it's
actually
a
are.
ton. I mean, look
Yeah,
at Dallas alone. Dallas alone in the Fort Worth area. I mean, there's at least 9 or 10.
right. And there is something. Go ahead, Elias. Go ahead.
How do we tie, you talked about MLS Next being the top tier. How do you tie even more clubs to into this top tier, right? So where your top FC Dallas kids are obviously getting called up to the first team if they're good enough, right? But how are they going to do that with Atletico Dallas? How are they going to do that? Are they doing that in San Antonio? Are they doing that in Mansfield, right? With the Mansfield team that's out there. So,
Mhm.
McKinney.
Right.
McKinney has the Chupacabras. What club is tied to the Chupacabras that are playing USL2 or whatever they're in? So it's how do we and I think that's what's huge in these other countries, and that's why they get even more players. Is that you don't have to be at Barcelona or at Real Madrid to get noticed. You're playing in your local team. Like you look at Pedri, he's playing for Las Palmas, but he kind of rose through the ranks, and then they found him because he got a shot at 17 years old for a smaller club. So that's I think is where all else we need to continue to grow, and with the size of the United States, you cannot rely on 30 MLS or how many MLS teams are there?
Are we
Uh,
at 30? Is it 31? What are we at right now?
Yeah, 30.
32. You cannot. That diminishes the resource that we have of having 365 million people in our country, right? When you're relying on only 30, MLS next clubs to really have that pro pathway.
Right.
So it's how do we continue to expand that into USL and things like that. So
You're
I
right.
think
There's 30.
there's
30.
30.
Yeah. And that's why I keep mentioning the system, right? Not pay to play, but the closed system. Because in the end, all roads take you back to that, right? They take you
Yeah.
back to that. They
Yeah.
it's inevitable. They take you back to that. So, but yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, that's it's such a great point, right? When you talk about, and we talk about supporting your club, your local club, and we're not just talking about MLS. Some of you don't live in those markets, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a USL Championship team, a League One, League Two, get out there, right? There's a lot of great, a lot of great organizations, a lot of great clubs that are doing a lot of great things, right? So,
There's a lot of great fan culture at a lot of those smaller
there
clubs
is,
too, man. They're
there
like
is.
just being able to go watch those games and sit with those fans and how inclusive everybody is. I think people are starting to feel that with how inclusive U.S. soccer is with all the Europeans that were coming over. It's not like We want everybody to be involved. The only people that aren't inclusive are Houston Dynamo. I mean, I just don't understand it. Nobody likes being around them. But maybe that's just because
Let's,
I'm a
yeah,
Dallas fan.
we'll give Heyman the floor for that one.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Yeah, we'll let him talk. No,
but
but I think the big important piece though is we do have all these clubs, and we've talked about what things that could help. The problem again is just like at the elite club level, right? The elite club level, the people that are benefiting the most off of it do not benefit if we go to a promotion relegation system.
correct.
So none of these MLS clubs want to see that because what does that mean for some of these teams that can't hack it and can't stay up or are always at the bottom? So until we can get those people out, and as far as say, listen, regardless of what you feel, you're going to have to invest some money into your club to make it grow, or you're not going to be around in the MLS anymore. And we've got all these other places. I think the system is there for promotion relegation to happen, but I think the people that are involved at the higher levels are not going to let that happen. So until we can figure that out, and I think that would completely change the landscape of what U.S. soccer looks like, promotion relegation would.
And how many? I don't even know how what the number that we're up to in terms of MLS owners that are also NFL owners, but I know it's a healthy amount,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
It is.
So that's just yeah. So when you talk about that and you talk about money and and if it's exclusively always just business oriented, money first, I get it. We're a capitalistic society country here, but in terms of all these things tied together when we start talking about growing the sport, right? Or why we're not as good as we should be. And yeah, and it's not about our best athletes. It's about way more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I would love to see, like, you go and, like, our local team in McKinney is a lot of ex-college kids, right? I would
Yeah.
love to see that be the 17, 18-year-old kids coming up. Like,
Honestly, that's what a lot of.
that's what it needs to be,
Yeah.
is that it doesn't need to be the kids that couldn't make it in the MLS. It needs to be our kids that have a chance to go and maybe haven't, didn't get to play on a club because they couldn't afford it or whatever. So, and I mean, there needs to be a balance, right? Because I mean, if you go look at the second division of England, half of those guys are washed up Premier League players that couldn't hack it, right? But yeah, I would probably say the other half are the young kids in some of the smaller academies that are looking for their first chance.
Well, I will give you some insider information. The Chupacabras actually, we've had conversations about their reserve team and how we make it like a pipeline for kids that are really good high school players out of our district, our area, moving into that the minute they are done playing high school, going to play for that reserve team while they're still kind of looking at colleges as well. Because they can play both, right? They can still come play, they can do the college route and they can play in that USL and still hold their eligibility. But there is talks about it. Whether or not it comes to fruition, I don't know. But there is some exciting things going on with soccer in a whole,
Yeah.
especially in the Dallas area right now.
And there is something to be said. We talked about it earlier. And this, Elias, this might seem like the antithesis to what you were just saying about the population of our country, but it's not. Is the cop out of, well, it's not our sport. It's like, guys, it doesn't have to be the number because of the size of our country. In no way, shape, or form does it have to be the number one sport in our country. That's why I made the point about go look at the top 5 or top 10 basketball players in the world, and how many of them are not American, right? Largely considered the best baseball player, right, in the world right now, Shohei Ohtani, right? He's not American, right? Football's a little football's a little different because it's really exclusively played here. But then you look at hockey, right? Hockey, which is obviously born in Canada, what have you, but the primary league is American, right? And it's one of the top 4, but overwhelmingly, a lot of those players, they're not American, right? So does it have to be the number one sport in this country to succeed? No. What I would like to see, can we go back to some sort of more localized and regionalized pathway model in terms of our local youth club system? Absolutely. Because I felt like we had that going back to the old ODP days, right? Who would have thought that we actually had the right development plan in place, in the 90s, early 2000s, right? And then it got complex, right? And why? Because it was all driven by, by one thing, by one color, green. So, my opinion, but I feel like these are some of the things. These are some of the things that need to be when you start getting at the root of how are we going to break through. They're all collectively linked together. I think so.
And
All right.
it's
So,
right.
final thoughts.
It's
Yeah,
a
go ahead,
million.
Javier.
It's a million small steps, but they add up, right? There's not one thing that's going to fix it. We've got to make small changes in a lot of different areas, right? Coach education has to get a little bit better, right? The culture, the way that we talk about the game, like I got to sit with the Spain supporters. Like that was such a cool experience. The way that they were talking about the game was like how coaches would talk about it, and
How
they
did they
were
interact with you as being American? I'm kind of curious. How did that go?
well. They first thing they sat down is they asked me if I spoke Spanish, and I said, good enough, like I understand. And then
Yeah.
they're like, so you're not Spanish, and I said, no, I'm not. And they said, well, today you are. So we became friends really fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't even know the guy next to me, but he was hugging on me when they scored. But it was just the way that they were talking about the game, and they're talking about like, look how he was ready to intercept that pass, like his position. They're talking about position. They're not just talking about the highlight play. So I think that's an area too that the soccer culture needs to continue. Is we need more high level talk about the game instead of just the old cliches of, well, they wanted it more, and they whatever it may be, right? It's just talking but there's a million little, my point before I get too far off of it is there's a million little things that we just need to get a little bit better at that I think can push us in the right direction. There does need to be an overhaul of our youth system, or at least the elite piece of our youth system. But because I do think that there's a place for recreational soccer, and not everything has to be you're preparing kids to go play in a World Cup, right? I think that that's sometimes something that's lost at points. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot of things that we need to be better at, and I think that this World Cup hopefully is bringing exposure to.
There is one developmental tool, I think, that if we plan right, if we use it right, and this will lead me into the question I have for you guys, is if we plan right and if we use it right, could be big in prepping us for 2030. And I'm not talking about potentially Copa America, but it's the Olympics, right? The Olympics that are here, right?
Yeah.
In what, LA? Is it LA? I think 2028.
Yeah.
I think it's LA, right? So that one could be used. We already know how it's implemented on the women's side, but on the men's side, if used properly, thinking about everything that we talked about with MLS players, our younger players, who are going to be the three identified older players, the over 23s, that is a great building block that I think where we took a huge hit and why inevitably 2018 happened was because how many Olympics did we not qualify for? I
Oh, we
think was
did
it
qualify for like two or three.
three, two or three. I think right. It was at least two. I think it was three in a row.
And
So
that preps your younger kids for those moments, right?
correct.
If you're in a quarterfinal of the Olympics, that's not much different than playing in a quarterfinal of the World Cup, right? I mean, you think about how many kids being in any sport. The Olympics is an incredible experience, and so that same type of pressure is going to be there in that kind of tournament.
I
More
know they
so,
were. I know they were in the semifinal. I'm not sure. Morocco was at least in the semifinal of the last Olympics, if not the final.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
not a coincidence.
Also, Morocco at the youth level has been winning and
Yeah. Yeah.
been up there. So yeah, it's not a coincidence of what they're doing right now. It didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of their growth and their development that they've done at the younger level. I think the biggest part for us is roster. Who are we going to put a guy like Alex Freeman should be on the roster 100%. But the problem is in years past when we get to this point, we're like, "Oh, we're going to bring in all new guys. We're going to bring in all younger guys that we want to look at." No, forget that. We need to go out and compete at this. And if we have those Christian Pulisic type kids that are playing on the men's national team, but they're old, their age is appropriate for them to play at that level, then get them in that game. I
Yeah.
think that's
The issue is like with a Freeman, Villarreal wouldn't have to release him. They're not obliged to release him to the
Right.
Olympics.
true.
Uh, so then these kids then which takes us back to the last Gold Cup and a lot of criticism, is they're the ones that have to push for the move or push to be able to go and say, I want to go and represent my country at the Olympics, right? You know, you saw it when Argentina won the Olympics in what was that, 2008? You know, Messi went to Barcelona and basically was like, I'm going to look to leave here if y'all don't let me go play for my country at the Olympics. So, you know, and that's something that hopefully Freeman, whoever else is of age, they are pissed off about how this ended on home soil. They know that that will be their last chance to play in a major tournament on home soil, and they say, "Kill me, or I'm going to the freaking
Yeah.
Olympics." You know,
Yeah, that's a great
so
point. That's a great point. Playing it on home soil. Yeah. Yeah, so true. So that leads me to this, right? Keeping in mind what I just mentioned, right? 2030. Is Poach still our coach? Yes or no? And if he's not, who is?
I think, I mean, as of right now, I think he is. I just don't know of that. Where's there a spot that he can go? And I think he really enjoyed his time over the last 2, 3 months. Really, I don't know if he maybe before, but you can tell they were really enjoying the experience that they were having through this. Unless a major club that he really is excited about wanting to go back and coaching pops open, I don't see there to be a reason why he's not. I would love to see him get the full 4 year cycle to prepare and get ready, because what he did with this group in such a short time was pretty spectacular. And I don't think that I saw an article talking about the loss needs to be more on the coaches than on the players, and I just don't agree with that. I think coaches can only do so much. I mean, it's the players that got to get on the field and implement and have that sense of urgency and that passion to play. But I think he needs to be. If he's not, there's only one name out there that I want to see being talked about, and we better go throw another bag at him just in case. If
How
it's
much are you willing to give Jesse Marsh? Tell us. Tell us.
not him, $0. No, but I mean, what did we pay? We paid like 10 million for Pochettino. Isn't that what the number
Was it 10? I thought it was like 7 or 8.
six. So I thought it was
Was it
six.
6? Was it 6? Okay. I don't know why I thought it started at 6, but it ended up being like 7 or 8 or something like. I don't know.
I don't know. Listen, I'm
If it was
calling
10, I was like, man, you're talking Nick Saban numbers here.
like 1920 for Pep Guardiola to get him in here and to coach this next group to see what we can do development wise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Copa America is a more realistic target for Poach. I think 2 years is a solid commitment. 4 years is a long time to be able to make a talk between now and then. I mean, even if he did sign a 4 year contract and they go and lay an egg at Copa America, then is he back in 2030, right? So do we want him here? Yes. Does he want to be here? I think he does. There's a lot of things in between now and then that have to continue to go right for him to return, I think, right? So I think he is the right fit for what we need right now. I think his style fits American culture. It is, we're going to fight, we're going to outwork you, we're going to run, we're going to press, we're going to be dynamic, it's going to be vertical, we're going to go up and down. And so I think that really fits what the player profile and, what the country and fans want. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Can we get a Pep Guardiola in here? It's well known how much he loves the U.S. I mean, that's not in the question. He loves the United States, and I don't know, after being in England, being in Germany, being in Spain, he's not going to coach a club in one of those three countries again. He already has said he's not going back to Barcelona to coach ever again. He's not going to be the Spanish national team manager because of all his political views. So I don't think that's out of the question that he ends up being the U.S. men's national team manager at some point.
He is being speculation, of course, but he is being kind of loosely linked to the Netherlands. I know that. That's the only country that I've seen him kind of loosely linked to.
And I could see him because Johan, he's talked about how Johan Cruyff was his father figure and how he's based everything. I don't think that that would be a crazy, but outside of that, who else are you going to get that's better than Poach
That's the real question, right? That's the real
for
question. Is
this
like,
team?
yeah,
And that, maybe is another thing. How do we get more American managers overseas? Right? How do we get more American managers? We're like, we want that guy. We want that guy to come be our coach. Right? Spain went and got Luis Enrique. Where is our Luis Enrique? Luis de la Fuente. Who are the younger youth national team managers, right? That we can bring up. So and I
but
think that's
the
that's
one that fits that criteria in term that you just mentioned is what's his name? Pellegrino Matarazzo right now, coaching in La Liga, right?
Yeah.
He's an he's an American by birth, but he came up. He was developed, groomed, everything in Europe, right? And he's now right the first American coach ever to lead a squad in La Liga, right? And I think that's one. He doesn't have the name of Poach, not yet at least, but I think that's the closest fit I think to that. Because you're right. Outside of that, who do you? I think with Poach, it's one thing to let him walk. It's another to make him tell you no, right? And I feel right now, I think I think we're kind of hitting on it. I think he probably comes back until the right opportunity club wise comes his way. So maybe it's a through Copa America if Copa America happens, but with all kinds of clauses to get out, and then that becomes so kind of a page holder, right? A book, bookmark. But then who steps in with 2 years left? A year and a half left.
where are all of our former players that get it? Like, we need former players getting into coaching and being effective coaches, right? You look at like France. France has had so much success because of Didier Deschamps. When he walked into that locker room, they said this man was a World Cup winning captain, and he had complete control of that locker room. And I think that that's a big thing that's overlooked with Poach's style is with Berhalter, the players had all the power. With Poach, he walked in, he was the biggest ego in the room because he had earned that, and the players knew that it was his way or the highway. It's the
Right.
same thing with, Lionel Scaloni in Argentina. Where is that manager that walks in and he is the boss? And that is what we need from our next manager if it's not Poach. It can't be a Bruce Arena, a Berhalter, somebody that's just a figurehead for U.S. soccer. It has to be that somebody walks in and they are the effing boss, right?
Yeah. See, and the one from the player profile perspective right now that's heavily in the mix that keeps coming up a lot is what's his name? Cherundolo, Steve Cherundolo. But in terms of holding the room, in terms of right, the aura, the moxie, all that stuff that we want to talk about, I don't know, right? I don't know if he holds. I don't. Is that closer to much closer to Berhalter than to Poach? Probably, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Interesting. So, but as we start to wrap up, we're officially in Joe Rogan territory, man. We've gone over 2 hours now, guys. So, hey, good stuff. Good, really good stuff. Again, if you're just joining us in here, this is episode 17 of the Red, White, and Crew podcast covering U.S. men's national team officially being out of the World Cup in their loss 1-4 versus Belgium. Recap and fallout where we discussed all kinds of things in terms of the U.S. men's national team performance in this World Cup and going forward. So, again, you can find us on X and IG at Red, White, and Crew Pod, as well as at 50_50 Pod, as well as on YouTube at the 50_50 Podcast. Go on there, YouTube, like this video, subscribe, hit the live bell notification so you get notified every time we go live. So, boys, let's wrap up. Let's get out of here. I did have some figures here to share with you guys really quick. World Cup so far, 96 games, 280 goals. That's a 2.92 per game average. 3 players with 7+ goals. 13. I thought it was 14. Well, no. Yeah, because of Balogun. 13 red cards. 526 passes made by Rodri, which is the most in an individual match. Or no, that's total, I should say, not individual. 61,813 kilometers covered by Tillemans. I'm wondering if that's the U.S. game. 0 goals conceded by only one team left. That's Spain. And then, of course, 8 teams remaining. So pretty interesting figures. So Final thoughts, boys, so we can get out of here. What are your thoughts? We'll start with you, Wes.
Final thoughts. I'm wondering if we're going to get one more upset before we, get out of here in the France Morocco game. I think that's a lot closer than what people think.
Mm.
Spain Belgium. Which Belgium team shows up to play, and would it be enough to deal with what Spain has? And then you've got Argentina Switzerland, where I just feel like everybody's paving the way for Argentina to make it to the final, and then we let the cards fall. But I think where your last upset is going to happen, I think it's Norway is going to go beat England. I think England is just banged up, and I think they're thin at the back. And Norway is in form, and it doesn't matter if he gets one touch or 1,000 touches. He's going to put it in the back of the net. And Alon is used to playing against a lot of those guys, so this is like prime territory for him to step up and have another big game, maybe 2 goals, hat trick, whatever. It's going to be interesting.
There's
personally
17 players right now sitting on a yellow going into these quarterfinals.
That's
Yeah,
another interesting thing to look at.
so yeah, I know. And Jude Bellingham is probably the biggest name on that list. Well, him and Harry Kane, biggest
Yeah.
name on that list.
So that's my one upset. I think it's going to end up being France, Spain, Norway, Argentina in the Final Four.
I have Morocco tomorrow. That's my call. I think Morocco finds a way to pull it off. Um, I think Spain, the way that they are not spectacular, but they are just controlling games. And it never, besides a moment or two, it never really seemed like Portugal was really going to threaten them. I think they haven't conceded more than maybe two big chances in any single game. Or what is it? One big chance, I think. It's like two shots inside the box and one big chance is the most they've conceded in a single game. Watching them live and just the way that they are always ready to defend for the ball out. I think that they take care of Belgium. I just don't see a way that Belgium is able to do what they did to the U.S. to them. I agree with you. I think that we have two upsets. I think Morocco and Norway pull it off. Argentina, they paid a lot of money to have Egypt let them score 3 goals. They paid a lot of money to have Colombia miss 2 PKs. They paid a lot of money to have Portugal get second in their group. I mean, they've paid a lot of money to get where they are right now, right? So,
Per the FBI, per the
for the
FBI.
FBI. So, and
Yeah.
I don't know, Wes sent it out. I've seen it floating around. The entire Swiss team is injured. They're all injured. So,
Yeah.
it's going to be, I don't even know who they're going to throw out there. So,
Well, there was a report a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw it about how some of the guys from like a big chunk of the roster for Norway were apparently under the weather or a cough or something or a fever. Did you see that?
I did see that.
Yeah. So, guys, do you know? Yep, definitely know who Alex Mendeja is. Yeah.
Zendejas.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting. I don't know, man. I feel like Morocco, with their skill level, with their talent level, I feel they're like a appropriate a certain level of game plan away from being able to topple France. But if they just try to go wide open, skill for skill, talent for talent, make it a track meet, and try to play it wide open with France, I think in a shootout, I think France inevitably. I think they kind of have to try to find a way with their skill to muck it up a little bit, like not quite like Paraguay, not to that extent, but in moments, right? In moments,
and
I
I
think
think
if
they've
they,
shown the ability to sit in still. Like, I don't think that they've lost that from the last World Cup, where they're able to sit in, absorb pressure. Like Bonu is an incredible tournament keeper. Oh my gosh, that man is insane. So I think he's going to have some big saves. And then yes, I agree. They have so much more on the counter than Paraguay did. And Paraguay looked like they had a couple chances where they were going to nick one. So yeah, I would not be surprised if they're able to topple France tomorrow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That is going to do it. So England, Norway. I think with Norway right now, I think Holland is really caught lightning in a bottle. So how do they defend him? How do they try to take him out of the game? I think it comes down to that. So, but he's looking like he's just really like another level of inform right now. So we'll see. I think we're in store for some great matchups. I think two of those, one. It's one a day. I think one tomorrow, one Friday, and then two on Saturday. So
Yes.
with today only our
Two
first
on the-
day off after 27 days.
Yeah,
What's
9th,
that?
10th, 2 on the 11th.
Yeah, two on the So
Well, I'll tell you, this podcast, I don't know if Sub Pop 79 has been watching a lot, but we talked a lot about Zendejas, and we all would have loved to have seen him play more than what he got.
yeah, yeah.
He was somebody that we were all high on, and we do agree. Yes, I agree that he was in better form than fake Captain America.
Yeah, I agree. So Sub Pop 79. He's from the same hometown, or largely the same hometown as me. So yeah, no argument for me. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is going to do it. So again, I've had some people was asking is if this podcast is going to continue now that the U.S. men's national team is out. Yes, it will. That was our other key piece. If you've been watching some of our episodes, is like we've been covering. We've had multiple previews on different teams to include Mexico, and we will have at some point a couple of watch-alongs. We'll have to figure that out, but definitely have more shows in store. And this is a podcast that we are just getting off the ground going forward as it comes to covering future U.S. men's national team key matches down the road, the U.S. women's national team World Cup next year in Brazil. So there's a lot more in store. So if you're just here, you're getting to be one of our day ones. So a little bit more here. So really appreciate that, Sub Pop. Thank you for joining. Go on there, tell like 10 people about this channel as well. Sub Pop, really appreciate you. So that is going to do it. So thank you again for joining us. So for Coach Elias Ramos and Coach Aaron Wessner, I am your host, Coach Hector Cano, and you know what to do. Until the next time, keep downloading and keep listening.